Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another very exciting Civilizations in Review. We're here with another fellow, Kirsten Mullen, calling in from Morocco. I'm so excited to hear a little bit about what you're doing there as well, Kirsten. But thank you so much for writing this fabulous empire, the Aghlabid Dynasty, which we'll dive into in a moment. You are joining with us on Facebook, so welcome all. We will also be cross-posting this to our Instagram, our website, our Spotify, and our YouTube, so you can engage with this fabulous conversation and learn about this pretty important Northern African dynasty. We will also, the best place really to engage with the content though is the website itself. We will talk about most of the great work that Kirsten wrote, but there are so many more articles, hyperlinks, and historical facts about this fabulous dynasty that we will not even get to in this call. So please go to the Al-Fuzaiq website, scroll to the Civilizations 101 section, and luckily Aghlabid is only the fifth one down alphabetically, so you don't have to scroll very far to learn more about this fantastic, engaging, fourth one down, empire. So without any further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Anna, our fabulous co-moderator extraordinaire, to read the 101 word intro, and we'll start this conversation. Thank you all again for being here. Excited to learn about this empire.
Thanks, Ben. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Kirsten. The Aghlabids were an Arab dynasty of emirs that ruled Ifriqiya, a historical region consisting of Tunisia, Libya, and Algeria, and parts of the southern Italy and Sicily for about a century beginning in 800 CE. The Aghlabids gained power when Ibrahim al-Aghlab was appointed emir of the region. Under Aghlabid rule, Ifriqiya became one of the autonomous states in the Abbasid Caliphate. The capital of Ifriqiya was present-day Tunisian city of Kairouan, which became the most important center of academics in the Maghreb and Aghlabid rule. Aghlabid ruled over Ifriqiya and ended around 900 CE when the Fatimids came to power. Wow, this actually stretched very long. Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, parts of Italy. It looks like it was pretty prominent in the area and pretty strong. How did you find, what made you want to write about this, and how did you find that sort of kind of spread that they had and inception?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I chose this empire in particular because the bulk of my professional experience at this point has been in North Africa. So I really wanted to choose an empire that was primarily in North Africa. Previously, I was a Middle East and North Africa fellow in Tunisia, and the head of the Aghlabid Empire was based in Tunisia. It wasn't in Tunis where I was, it was in Kairouan, but obviously like the country of Tunisia was kind of the center of the empire. And it's played a really important part in Tunisian history. So I was excited to learn more about the past. I think when you think about like ancient Tunisia, the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is Carthage, and that's obviously the most well-known ancient empire. I hadn't really heard about the Aghlabids before, so I was excited to dive in and learn more especially about a country that means so much to me.
We'd love to hear that. Carthage is also on Al-Fuzaiq's website, so please another very powerful empire. What I find really cool about the Aghlabids is kind of just as you mentioned, Kirsten, it's not really talked about in the discourse of North African empires, dynasties, kingdoms, and yet they were, not only spanned a relatively long time, but a pretty wide geography, hitting parts of Europe as well. A lot of the North African empires talk about Morocco and Spain, and so I think this is interesting that this empire specifically is connected to Italy. So I don't know if you have more details about the geographic reach of the Aghlabids, but that's where I want to start this conversation and your research about them.
Yeah, so like you said, the geographic reach was pretty extensive. The Aghlabid Empire, they nominally ruled on behalf of the Abbasids, who were based out of Baghdad, but they're widely considered to be the first independent rulers of Ifriqiya, the region that consists of modern-day Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya. But one of the main points in their history was the conquest of Sicily. So at one point, the empire ruled parts of southern Italy as well, including Malta and I believe Corsica. So they had a very wide ranging from parts of Algeria through Tunisia to Libya, and then parts of southern Europe as well. They were known for their strength in their fleet. So for their powers in terms of being able to conquer by boat. So I think that's what really helped them with the conquest of Sicily. So yeah, a very wide geographic reach, and very like powerful empire at the time as well.
That is actually amazing. I think that most of the ones that I have done, at least I haven't heard about like by boat or fleet or
Mm,
kind of like this conquering through water, which usually happens by land, and it just kind of
yeah,
continues on, especially when the spread is so big. I mean, I personally wrote about Seljuk, and it was pretty widespread, but there was no kind of like hitting like any ocean or moving like across in that sense. So this is actually like very interesting. I can imagine that there was a lot in the ruling system and economic wise that they kind of like could sustain this sort of power. But there
yeah.
was something that no, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say it was particularly surprising to me when I read that because Carthage or Tunis wasn't the base of the empire. It was in Kairouan, which actually isn't on the Mediterranean, like it's inland in
Right.
Tunisia. So it was interesting to me that they were so powerful by sea, but it played like a big role in their ability to expand the empire.
No, for sure. I mean, they went from this spread in northern Africa to kind of moving into to Italy for some time, and also the timing that they were ruling. I mean, it's quite long, and you think about it, and it's pretty amazing. Something that was mentioned in the sort of intro was that they became an important center for academics, and I wonder if some of this uh, influence and some of this education and system, we can see it today in Tunisia, I think primarily.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of their most famous architectural impacts has been the Grand Mosque of Kairouan, which is very well known.
Wow.
It's a beautiful mosque, and that was primarily constructed by the Aghlabids. I believe I believe that they also played a very big role in the Mosque Zaytuna in Tunis.
Okay.
Have a lot of impact today, as well as some aqueducts outside of Kairouan, which are still very famous, and still a landmark that people visit for tourism purposes, but at the time played a big role in bringing wealth to the region. And they were
Okay.
known for investing in those public work projects, in aqueducts and things like that that would benefit the whole of society.
Um,
Wow, amazing.
the main photo of Aghlabid is the Grand Mosque of Karawan.
Yeah.
So please check out the photo of the
Yeah.
on the the hyperlink is to like a full series of this mosque, so you can see a
Mm,
lot of the different photos of this still standing architectural marvel from like over 1,000 years ago.
yeah.
Incredible to see that it's still standing and engaging. I know we already talked about the boats, but I just think that's a really important point to really talk about still some more. So
Mm,
many of these empires, and we have 93 total, I would say easily 85 of them without even really looking, had nothing to do with water travel.
mm,
Irrigation, absolutely. Aqueducts, using new pipelines. Sure, they were smart with how to use water, but they didn't primarily travel by it, either because of landlocked or other things. And so I just think you don't have to necessarily say anything additional, but I just
yeah.
want to really reiterate how unique that is. That was the way that how else could they have gotten to Sicily, to Corsica, to Malta?
Right.
Was the boat is the only answer, and
The fleet, yes.
could have gone down through the Sahara, but they
Mm,
said just that is just something so different in the ways of a lot of these empires. Still conquest, probably still enslaved people, probably the same trade routes as normal, but to utilize boats and have such a powerful fleet, and to not be talked about today, I think is a disservice to the ingenious and incredible ability of this empire. So say more if you have more details on the boats or water travel, but I just think it's something really fascinating to highlight that I wanted to share again.
I don't have more details on the boats or water travel, but do about the just kind of fact that the empire is generally overlooked for how much they produced. There are some scholars who have referred to the Aghlabid rule as the golden age of that time period. It was um, a really wealthy empire, and the wealth of the empire like played a really big role in why the Fatimids, who were essentially who ended up taking down the Aghlabids, but why they wanted control over Africa was because of how much um wealth the Aghlabids were able to produce out of that empire and that land. So yeah, I think it's very interesting as well, that they are understudied. That is like a theme that came up a lot in my research when I was trying to find information. First of all, there's like not a ton of information out there, but then a lot of the information that I did find was lamenting the fact that they are, and it is an understudied period in history, and calling for kind of more scholarship around the empire and around just medieval North Africa in general, not just the Aghlabids that are understudied, but a lot of the empires that existed around the same time period in North Africa. One of the texts that I read said that the majority of focus has been historically on Egypt and Iraq, but that a lot of the empires in North Africa really deserve to be studied as well for the impact that they've had on the region and on history.
Hey, you know what? That's why Alphazaic is here, because
Yeah, of course.
That's what we try to do.
we,
Absolutely.
yeah, no, we're covering so many empires and we're discovering so many new things and amazing, influence that some of these empires still have today. I mean, a lot, like you said, like a lot of the work that they did is quite maybe overlooked, but it was really important in that time, but also important for today because it created this sort of like areas and created the systems for what works in today's in the region. I was thinking about because a lot of the times we, I don't, I like to think about like what the politics look like, what like
Mhm.
how did they rule, like how did they rule, or like what made them, so prominent and spread so much and spread so long, and how did the people react to this and that sort of kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. That, like I said, there was not a ton of information on the empire generally, so I don't know if I have an exact answer, but I can I have a little bit. So one of the things I think that did make them so powerful, like why this empire, why did they generate so much wealth, was the position. Like Tunisia is really well positioned in general. It's halfway between Morocco and Egypt, so is able to connect kind of all of North Africa. It's connected to the Sahara on the bottom, so they were able to have trade routes with sub-Saharan Africa, and then obviously able to reach Southern Europe by boat. So it was really like kind of in the center of the Mediterranean and able to kind of capitalize on that position. And it's through those trade routes that they really generated a lot of that wealth. Like Ben had mentioned before, they did participate in the slave trade, which also generated a lot of wealth for the empire. And those connections, I think, particularly with Egypt, which gave access to the rest of the Middle Eastern empires, was really important in terms of their like general location. I did read that they had a very complicated judicial system and tax system. So they are also well known for those two facets.
Mm. Can't
Can,
be perfect.
can you
Yeah,
say more
no, of course
about
not.
do you know a bit more details of the complicated tax system by any chance?
I don't. And most of the things that I read just said that they had an extensive tax system. But then, it also said that they did invest heavily in public works. So I'm assuming that the heavy tax system helped fund those things like the aqueducts and public works that they invested in.
A lot of early Islamic empires leaned into the taxation system for local communities, different religious
Mhm.
groups, etc. So it's probably in that same space. Just always curious how
Yeah.
different communities utilize their financial wealth. And clearly, the Aghlabids focused on travel and trade
Mhm.
more than
Yes.
anything. Interesting. So you've
Mm.
mentioned Golden Age a couple of times, and I think the whole point of this Alphuzaic Civilizations in Review is to spotlight all of the strong empires that made an impact in the region, or as many as we can. All of maybe too large of a word. Do you have any more details about sort of how this empire was such a golden age for the hundreds of years it was in power?
The golden age. Yeah, I think it was just that on top of the economic wealth, Kairouan also became a real center of Islamic thought and scholarship and education. So at that time within the Mediterranean countries, Kairouan was really the center. It was where people would go to study Islamic thought, is where like a lot of scholarship was based out of. So on top of the like economic dominance kind of, there was also that important thought and literature that kind of came out of that period, from Kairouan being the center. And Kairouan is still like an important city in Tunisia to this day, and is definitely
Yeah.
viewed that way, as being like a center of thought. So I thought that that was really interesting, that, you know, that position. Tunis is definitely, it's the capital, it's definitely the economic center, but Kairouan is definitely continues to play an important role in modern day Tunisia, which I'm sure is no coincidence.
No, and most definitely when economics and kind of mixes with education and it goes together, it remains, it has the influence for over time, which is,
Yes.
such an important piece of like, I think of these, a lot of these dynasties, empires, and early civilizations. They set the tone for what the rest of the country would look like. I think,
Right.
I think it's great. Actually, I'm still very much impressed as well by the fleets and the conquering and going. Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. It's something new, and it's definitely very fascinating. And also how did, like, was it like more of like a solo kind of empire? Did they have any like allies, or was there anyone kind of like with them, or
So it wasn't a solo empire. I think I'd mentioned earlier that they were ruling on behalf of the Abbasids in Iraq. And something interesting that I just read actually was that in the Mosque Zaytuna in Tunis, it's still, there's some writing saying that, I don't exactly know what is, but it mentions the Abbasid Empire as opposed to the Aghlabid Empire, because they were ruling on behalf of the Abbasid Empire, who wanted to expand
um,
reach in North Africa. Um, when the Aghlabid Empire started to gain dominance in North Africa, Amazigh people were still the majority of the population in North Africa, and then they played a role in kind of the expansion of the Iraqi Empire and the Arab influence in North Africa. So that was another kind of key fact about the empire.
The idea of like a vassal state, which I know Anna writing Seljuk is a very big thing that you're familiar with too, is a pretty common one in a lot of these
Mm,
empires. And for us,
yeah,
for Al Fuzaik's purposes, those vassal states are their own empire, maybe on behalf of Shur, but they themselves have their own land and their own tribulations and their own
yeah,
boats, I guess, to deal with. So
they're on both.
I mean, yes, the Abbasid, is known for its full reach, but
Right.
really the North African or Ifriqiya portion was clearly the Aglabids for part of its history, which is
Yeah.
why this article
And
exists in the first place.
it's
Yeah,
really interesting. It was actually really hard for me to discern to what
sure.
extent the Abbasids played a role in Aghlabid decision making. It seems like
mm,
there was one sentence that I read in one of the sources that I consulted that said it was like in all but name. Like it was really the Abbasids, they never questioned the authority of Iraq over the region, but they were like the Aghlabids were really the primary rulers. They didn't consult with them on any major decisions. They were functionally, I think, the first independent rulers of the region, despite technically ruling on behalf of the Abbasid Empire. So it was kind of, like I said, it's a little bit hard to tell exactly because there wasn't super detailed information on it. But it does seem that for the most part, they were independent over the region and were like really making a lot of decisions on their own.
yeah, I mean, I can see it, and even when you spoke about the ruling system and the harsh taxes and the hard kind of judiciary, I mean, that sort of comes from the people, how well they accept who's ruling them, and how much they take it in. So that was actually one other piece that I was thinking about when you were saying about the harsh tax system. It's only harsh if the people don't really accept it. It may look harsh
Mm,
in theory, but if there are public works and there are other things that people are okay with, like the teachings, Islamic teachings, etc. I think that at the end, it wasn't so harsh, and kind of elevated their position in the region, and also gave them the very well deserved influence that they have. And it's very fascinating a lot of times to learn about these empires, because it teaches us something about today, like how you rule people, or like how a political system is designed, or a government. And I always think about that.
yeah.
How does the civilization comes into power, how it remains in power, what it does in the time, and how that continues to live on. We're talking about it so long after.
Yeah, I Unfortunately, I wasn't really able to find much information on how the empire was perceived by the general populace. Like I said, it is
Yeah.
understudied, and that's like I think a viewpoint that's kind of understudied generally in history. So for an
Yeah.
understudied empire, probably even less likely that there's going to be sources out there related to that. But it is a really interesting question, and it's something that I would love to, learn more about if any like scholarship emerges on it.
Something to think about.
We're ready
Yeah,
for an
definitely.
updated article down the road. Can't wait.
Yeah.
I mean, Kirsten, you're one of the primary experts seemingly in Aghlabid, so maybe that's something you focus on. I'm not going to throw it away, but excited to see more.
Yeah, maybe the title expert is a bit much, but I did enjoy researching them a lot. It's very interesting.
Having this on our site is such a huge space to add to the discussion because the Aghlabid community in of itself, regardless of being a Abbasid vassal or otherwise, still was a big part of this community.
Yeah.
The name comes from a very influential North African Tunisian man. Like this history is still centered. All of Karajan is like the connection points to it. So it's clear that this is in a conversation that has needed to be had. And so,
Yeah.
expert or otherwise, thank you for writing this article and
Yes,
educating Alfuzaic's global community and anyone else you meet about the strength, the history, the legacy of this dynasty. So thank you, regardless of
yeah,
name.
of course. I just wanted to share something else quickly. I just trying to find the quote exactly, but I was something that really struck me in terms of the importance of the empire going through to today is that on Tunisia's official tourism website, so today,
Cool.
they say that under the Aglabids, Tunisia regained the economic, political, and cultural influence that it had in the antiquity. So even Tunisia's official government recognizes the Aglabids as a pretty influential empire in its history. So
Beautiful.
definitely glad to have been able to study them as well.
Incredible, especially since you personally spent so much time in Tunisia. To
Yes.
have
Yeah.
that through line is really, really fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other fun facts, cool historical pieces, things maybe you left out because it was too much info, that you want to share about the Aghlabids from your research?
I'm trying to look. I have my notes here. I think that we hit a lot of the important things. But yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot more out there, and I'm sure hopefully that there's more people that will be studying it in the future, and more information will continue to emerge that we can share.
We can do as many Aghlabid articles as necessary.
That's great.
Well, thank you first and foremost for writing this fabulous article. I know it's something you personally are very invested in your time in Tunisia and the rest of North Africa, but this article is a great example of the importance of talking about the different historical components. And it's great to see that, modern Tunisia, that's part of their tourism website.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tiny, tiny thing, not a huge deal, but the fact that it's recognized as, hey, this is part of our history, let's celebrate and showcase the magnificence that still remains is something that's really beautiful to talk about. Thank you, Anna, for your candor and perspective. It's always so exciting to hear your thoughts and questions. And again, Kirsten, for such a spectacular article and conversation today. What a fabulous time. And any final words of wisdom or historical facts you'd like to share before we sign off?
I would just encourage people to take time to look at the civilization section on the website. There are really so many that I personally did not know about, even as someone who is really interested in this region and history. There's a lot there. I relied on other parts of the website very heavily for my own research when reading about the, who came before the Aghlabids, who came after the Aghlabids, like where are they in kind of the timeline of history. So yeah, I would definitely check out that section of the website. And there's so many other great things on the website that it's definitely worth a visit.
It's lovely to hear that from someone that's not myself. So thank you.
Of course.
Exactly why
I agree.
I mean, beautifully said. I couldn't do it better. That's exactly what Alfuzaic's civilization interview section was set up for. And I mean, specifically on Aghlabid, there are at least 5 other empires on Alfuzaic's website. It's hyperlinked. So that in of itself is a conversation throughout our own site of all of these different empires and their connection points. So yeah, please check it out. We have only 4 remaining. So if you'd like to be one of the lucky final 4, please join us at the Alfuzaic Write For Us link. Everything at the Alfuzaic website, alfusaic.net. Thank you again, Kirsten, for such a fantastic article and your candor. Thank you, Anna, for your fabulous questions and just support. And thank you, audience, for listening, engaging, and hopefully reading this fantastic article. Everything's on the Al-Khuzaic website. We'll wrap up here. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.